Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this new episode. And if you listen to the end, you'll hear Rod talk about
the opinions held of us by those who love us is generally far more accurate than those we hold of ourselves.
Of course. See you there.
I don't really have a job. I half the time I production design movies. I used to be a cinematographer, but I kind of gave up on the whole career thing. I was just like, I'm just
career isn't really working for me.
I'm just gonna stay at home, and when someone calls me to do something, I'll decide if I want to do
it. That's amazing. That's how we're going to start the show.
Yeah. So
once again, this is Rod, the filmmaker, and you can find him at openjourneylove.com because he's making this amazing documentary.
Yep.
About really about
the relationship. And how ethical non-monogamy and all its various iterations can impact individuals and relationships, self-esteem and intimacy and communication and authenticity, which is a big one for me. So,
and why is authenticity such a big one for you?
Well, so for most of my life, if someone meets me and spends some kind of amount of time with me, they're getting to know the real me. I'm very much an open book. I wear my heart on my sleeve. And I always thought that was just a personal choice. And I always wished more people were less guarded about who they are. About 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with autism, and it all started to make sense. For a lot of people with autism, and certainly with my experience with autism, it means my incoming and outgoing filters don't function in the societally expected way. And so my outgoing filter, it means I don't really have one. And so I'm just kind of, here I am. and so now I realize, I never had a choice. It wasn't a personality choice. It's that
it's just who you are.
I just don't know what that means to try to, like when you hear about going into a situation, behave this way in this situation. I'm always like, wait, I can't do that. I don't know how to be one way in one place and another way in another place. And so that's the outgoing filter part of it. And when I started finding myself in these E&M environments, hotel takeovers, lifestyle clubs, anything like that, finding this community of people that are more prone to authenticity was literally like finding home for me. I mean, it's the prominent feature of ethical non-monogamy for me is the authenticity of people. And what I mean by that is obviously sex with other people is sort of the thing that everybody, that's of course the lightning rod. That's the thing that everybody talks about. And that's certainly the thing that got my attention. But in my case, the way we were exposed to the concept was a few years ago, I stumbled upon lifestyle podcasts. My partner Jane did and said, you should listen to podcasts while you're on the road, because among my various jobs, I am on the road a lot. So I was listening to these podcasts, and I ended up listening to 7 years of this one lifestyle couple's relationship in 7 days. So I had this very compressed overview of their relationship, and it just gave me, and again, this is partially from the autism, I just had this crystal clear image of what our relationship could look like, infusing this openness with each other, and that honesty about desires and so on. And then, of course, the things it challenges you to work on, the things it challenges you to deal with, namely fear, insecurity, things like that. And I was just hooked. And I went home to Jane, my partner, and I said, listen, sex with other people sounds fun and all, but what I'm saying is we should not settle for anything less than this kind of relationship. And I said, do you trust me enough, just enough, to follow me on this path of let's start working on the things that have to be put in order to even pursue this? Because if you're not pretty solid with yourself and with your relationship, it can be obviously pretty destructive. And so she said, okay. and we just started working on the personal growth aspect of it and the relationship stuff. And it didn't take long for her to see how different it was to experience this authenticity. And among other people,
I interviewed Kate Lurie, the author of Open Deeply. And one of the things I really appreciated that she said was we talk a lot about how it improves communication between couples. But she said, for instance, she knows couples that are both attorneys. I mean, they're prime communicators, but what it changed was their compassion.
Oh.
And I thought, yeah, because what it's changed for us, as an example, for Jane and I, with Jane, it really has been, she's learned better how to identify what she's feeling. That's nothing she's paid that much attention to for most of her life. She's
Right.
just gone along for the ride. And here she is having to pay, okay, what is it I'm feeling? And then how do I express it? And then I've learned how to be more patient and compassionate and learn how to not take something, for instance, that she expresses personally, because it's not about me, no matter what it is. I mean, a perfect example would be, as I mentioned at the beginning, I do whatever I want as a career. So that means my income is great and nothing, and great and nothing, and has been for 35 years. That's all I've ever known. Last job I had was 1990. And, at one point she was kind of feeling stressed about things. This was a couple of years ago. And she finally was able to express that she was just kind of going through anxieties about the future and finances and stuff. And because of the work that we were doing to improve ourselves in our relationship, in the past, yeah, I would have felt something defensive about that because I know that my fluctuating income is part of that stress. But I was able to just be compassionate and say, that's a reasonable thing to be stressed about. We'll figure it out one way or another, but, including the concept, and this is a really hard one for people to grasp, but including the concept of, if this relationship isn't going to work, we're both going to be okay. Because that's a really hard one for people to grasp. I tell people all the time, trust in our partners or trust in other people is really important. But the big one is trust in ourselves. I have to know, the common concept is people might worry about their partner stepping out on them or cheating on them. And I hate those phrases, but okay, I trust that Jane cares about me and doesn't want to hurt me and wouldn't cheat on me. But more important, if she does, I trust that I'll be okay. And so because of that, I can, and of course that's a funny topic in this context because of what we're talking about, but
Right.
It's just a common one so many people at large can relate to, because what so many people don't realize is when someone cheats on you or someone breaks up with you, of course it's heartbreaking, but for so many people, the pain is so much more than heartbreak. And it's because a lot of people don't realize they've attached their value and their sense of who they are to this. So when someone breaks up with them, one of the feelings they're having is, I'm lesser than,
Right.
because this person broke up with me.
Right.
And that's where I'm saying, no, you have to trust. If someone breaks up with you, it's because you are incompatible. It's that simple. It's not because you're lesser than.
No,
there may be something they don't like that you do, and it may even be something you have to work on. But that doesn't mean you're a lesser person. It just means this just didn't work. This
Yes.
didn't mesh.
It took me a long time to realize that, actually going through many breakups and being cheated upon and taking it, personally. And, I tell people going through a breakup for me was far more traumatic than losing a loved one in death, because death I had no control over. But if someone broke up with me, it was probably because something that's wrong with me. And so what can I do to change that, to make this better so we can stay together?
Yep.
Because I did put so much, the two are intertwined. Me and that person were so intertwined. I just couldn't see myself as an individual without that person. It's really sad to say that. And I'm not that way today, but it took me a long time to really find out who I truly was and to begin to trust myself.
Yep.
And to be able to put myself in a position to have a relationship like I have now with Jackie,
Yep.
to where there isn't any fear.
Because, when you have that dynamic where you're attaching your value, your sense of purpose to this relationship, all you've done is attach a burden to it. There's this burden on the relationship. So when you can feel both of you like, no, I'm an individual that has my own identity and cares about myself and wants to take care of myself, and you are the same way, now this relationship can thrive because we're not putting all this weight on it being something. Yeah, I definitely went through the beginning of my, real sort of emotional growth journey was a painful event in 2004, which revolved around a woman cheating on me and breaking up with me. And yeah, I remember coming out of that. Fortunately, I was already in the habit of doing a lot of self-observing. And I remember going through that and I remember like wiping off the kitchen table and feeling this sense of why? What's the point? If, who am I doing this for? And going, okay, that's kind of effed up. Like, what?
You doing it for you?
Like, don't I just want a clean table?
Right.
But it's so easy for us to attach our meaning and our value to these relationships. Mothers go through it a lot when it comes to the empty nest thing. The children have moved out. What's my purpose? What am I doing here?
Right.
And then men go through it a lot when it comes to their career and whether they've succeeded and what's the point. And again, been there. And of course, people in both genders go through both of those things, but it's just prevalent in those roles. And yeah, it's just real easy for so many of us to attach our value to things that are outside of us, and just puts a burden on things.
And since you and Jane have been on this journey, has it become more open relationship? Have you guys experimented or tried? Or
we have experimented. We're very slow movers. For one, because we're quite introverted, in spite of the fact that I'm sitting here on a video program. In fact, our Twitter handle and our Cassidy handle is Swingtroverts. And
That's
so yeah,
cute.
we go to some of these events and resorts and hotel takeovers, and everyone always knows we're the couple that's just sort of hanging all over each other in a corner, just watching people. And but fortunately for us, enough people are intrigued enough to come over and talk to us, and because we love hearing people's stories and talking about what we're going through. So yeah, we have experimented, and we're still definitely working through again, insecurities and concepts of what this means and what that means. And I talk a lot about, just in conversation as well as in the documentary, about how our generation, we're both in our 50s, are the ones that have had to go through this paradigm shift of changing how we see relationship from the way we were raised, whereas these younger generations, like say I have a daughter who's 35 and a son who just turned 30, and their generation is more like, wait, there's a name for this stuff? We're just doing what comes naturally. The idea of monogamy isn't so harshly ingrained in them as the only way. And so, yeah, we're definitely experimenting and learning. And for me, that learning is what I'm so passionate about. I mean, super passionate. And that's what prompted me merging my passion for how E&M can impact people with my passion for filmmaking. And at a Podcast-a-Palooza, one of the lifestyle events last year in Palm Springs, I was speaking with some other podcasters, Bomber and Bell from Black and Kinky, Bomber who just passed away a few months ago, in fact. But I was talking with him about television and movies and video and the lifestyle and merging things, and it just hit me like lightning. I need to do a documentary about this. How did I not? To me, it was like 2 + 2 = 4. The sky is blue, and I should be doing a documentary about this. How did I not put that together? And so I started reaching out to people to interview. I'm really trying to emphasize a broad range of experiences in a few different fronts. So, for instance, we're talking to hot wives and bulls and what we sometimes call as DTF swingers, to polyamorous folks, people that are in polyquads, and all these ranges in between. Because to me, it's not about which path you choose. They all have overlap, and they all challenge some of the same things that sort of force personal growth or not, but if they do, the rewards are incredible, and then similarly, I'm doing my best to try to include people of different colors, different sexual orientations, sexual identities, etc. Because again, the point is it's all overlapping. We're all kind of going through very similar experiences in that regard. So trying not to just hone in on say, the swinging lifestyle, which is what we were kind of introduced to, but include a lot of different iterations of E&M.
Would you say that there's a common denominator in all of these ethical non-monogamous relationships? Is there one thing in all of these interviews that you're finding is prevalent in all of them? I know you brought up communication, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
personal growth.
The biggest things that have gotten me so excited about all of this are the impacts that I seem to seeing consistently on self-esteem, especially with women. Women's self-esteem, I mean, and I've seen women and men's self-esteem go up, but especially women. And I just get I was raised by a single mom, so I don't know if that's what it is, but I get really excited about women feeling empowered and feeling confident. Yeah. And I feel like in this community, I've heard so many men echo the sentiment, nothing is more attractive or sexy in a woman than confidence. It just makes all the difference. And so that's been a big one, a big consistent one. Communication, as you said, definitely. So many people talk about how they've had to learn. You are forced to learn to communicate what you want, what you don't want. Kind of molding those two together, I would say as an example, the thing Jane and I are talking about of late, about any anxiety that we have going into situations, we really kind of pinpointed, the thing that keeps holding us back is our fear of saying no. The discomfort in saying no. We kind of talked about it at this thing this past weekend. Mm-hmm. You have to learn to be comfortable. I'm comfortable with receiving no, so I must not be fully comfortable with it, or else I would know. It's okay to tell other people no. And so that's an example of something we're working on, which involves both how we feel about ourselves and the fact that saying no does not make us a bad person, as well as then communicating it. Authenticity, as I mentioned, is a big one that I've seen consistently. I mean, I just love the fact that you can go to a party or a club or an event or a hotel takeover and meet someone, and in 6 minutes you're talking about really vulnerable issues. That's like heroin to me. I love people being really open and real with me, and I love the other side of that, which is providing a safe environment for people to do that. That's the key. People have to feel safe doing that. And I think that's a lot of what this community provides. And I guess kind of the result of all of that is just what I refer to as intimacy, which for me, the way I define intimacy is very much about vulnerability. A lot of people attach intimacy, let's say, to sex. And what is sex except for taking your most vulnerable physical parts and doing things with them, as well as just that vulnerability of being loving and being kind and looking into each other's eyes and, asking someone, can I do this or whatever. All of those things involve vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what intimacy is. And that's what I see really increase with so many people that at least explore these different iterations of E&M. And another point I think that's really valid, especially for people that are new to this, is the fact that, again, you can have sex with other people or not. It doesn't matter. Right. Yeah. That is not the point. It's really not the point. It may feel like the point. And for some people, sure, that's the goal. If that's the goal, you're probably going to have some challenges, more challenges. Whereas if it's a thing that just might happen because, you're exploring this, then great. Just having the conversations around it, that's what really brings up these, how do you feel about the idea of me playing with someone? How do you feel about you playing with, let's dig into, you're crying. Why are you crying? Let's get into that. Yeah. We've had that issue where, as an example, Jane expressed a concern about me being with someone, and we had to say, okay, so now me being with someone isn't the problem. We won't do that because we need to focus on this. But let's set aside that that's the problem, because that's not the problem. The problem is something you're feeling about that's not accurate, which is that this is somehow a reflection. One of the most important concepts that's so hard for us to grasp is, if my partner feels something for someone else, that takes nothing away from me. But we think it does. We feel like, again, it's back to that, wait, what's my value if you feel something for someone else?
Well, I mean, we're taught that, right?
Absolutely. Right. The dream pairing, the soulmate, the et cetera, et cetera. So much pop culture just really piles it on that we were meant to be together, and et cetera. And fortunately, Jane and I are very practical people about that sort of thing. But still, when you're raised in this atmosphere to constantly think that love is a finite resource,
right?
And again, even within more of the swinger framework, where a lot of times people are afraid to address feelings. So they'll say, what do you mean love? That's not what this is about. It's like, okay, then expressions of affection, even, people can, gosh, how many stories have you heard of new couples, let's say, that are exploring, and they've even full swapped with someone, but then the husband will see the wife holding hands with the other husband, and that will just send him off the deep end.
Yes.
Right.
Like, you just had sex, but now you're holding hands. And it's again that concept of, wait, that's a loving gesture.
Right.
You've taken something away from me. And so I'm always saying, as part of the solution, okay, stop holding hands for now while we address this. So it's not an excuse to say, I should be able to hold hands. No, stop, because this is what you want to, you want to nurture this relationship. But now let's dig into, why is that so threatening to you? And let's really get into, as tropish as it sounds, it's usually comes back to what happened as a child, whether it was trauma or just the way we were taught. What happened as a child that gave you this fear of me expressing affection to someone, or whatever. So
it ultimately does come down to a fear, probably, and it's probably unfounded, but it's still important to address it and get to the root of it, because that's the only way you can change fears, by admitting that the fear is there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just the fact that our systems, you hear anthropologists and the like talk about this all the time. Our systems don't know the difference between I'm being chased by a lion and I've been broken up with.
Right.
Our brain has this same kind of reaction, and you have to go, being chased by a lion, I mean, I might go through some serious pain and death.
Right.
Being broken up with someone, no, none of that is really going to happen. You just feel like it could happen.
Right.
And so it's like, we have to learn how to, okay, I'm going to be okay, with whatever happens. And,
But I think that goes back to what you had said earlier when we're dealing with attachment, which has to do with our self-esteem, or how we view ourselves, or how we view ourselves in that arena of our partnership. And, when we have those, what tends to happen is we give it a different word. We're jealous, or we're depressed, or we're, and I'm not saying that we can't suffer those things, right, which we can, but I think sometimes it's really hard to admit to ourselves that I'm having an issue with this because of something with me.
Yeah.
We want it to be, I want it to be John's fault that we're having this problem. I don't want it to be my fault.
Exactly. Because then I have to do something about it.
Then I have to do something. Whereas it's way more fun to say, you change this and then we'll be happier.
Yeah.
But the problem with that too, of course, is that's not the problem. But as soon as we put that expectation out there, we're never going to be satisfied, because our partner, it's not going to matter what they do different. If we don't tackle that
it's still there.
It's still there.
Yep.
So that is one thing that I notice with people that tend to fall into this ethical non-monogamous space, is they tend to be a little more willing to do that when it does come up, because we're not as afraid to have those conversations.
Exactly.
I know when we have get-togethers at the house, it's so interesting to watch just the mode of conversation that takes place with everybody in there. It tends to be like, wow, look what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like deep stuff.
This is intense stuff.
Yeah, and how we can deepen our relationships, and what I did instead of, what do you do for work and how are the kids? And
Yeah.
those are important, but
Yeah.
man, how do we?
But these are the
keep those-
challenging subjects,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
and that seems to be one of the things, one of the themes is that it's almost like there's like nothing harder for us to talk about than sex.
Yeah.
As a culture, I guess there's like nothing harder to talk about than sex, and so once we've opened that door, the rest of it's easy.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as we've made that a thing we're comfortable talking about, well, now we can address all these other things with patience, with compassion, even though being passionate about it. As you mentioned, there were all these people gathered together this weekend from different angles with different opinions, different points of view. What a wonderful, collaboration of people just respectfully throwing in different ideas and working through it all. And back to your point about how it's something we have to work through ourselves. One of my favorite quotes I like to share is that the opinions held of us by those who love us are generally far more accurate than the opinions we hold of ourselves. Because those opinions we have of ourselves, that's where all the flaws are. That's where everything is, that because we have all this history that we're attaching to everything. Whereas people who love us, they don't remember when you stole a cookie when you were 4 and how you felt ashamed of that and how that's piled on to, everything else you felt. You hold on to these things. And if you just stop and say, we talk about, well, my mom said I'm handsome, and of course, then once we're older and married, we feel that way about our spouses as an example. Well, yeah, he says I'm attractive, but it's like, no, listen to these people and the family who love us and our friends who love us. They're telling us what's really here. The thing that's weighing our own self-opinions down is all this history that doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
That's all stuff that happened 20 years ago or 6 months ago. It's literally nothing but this memory in your brain. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing that you should be putting weight on. If you don't like something you did before and you're working to do better, well, then just focus on here's who you are today. So
I love that.
I do too. In how many people have you interviewed so far, do you think, in your documentary?
Gosh, I need to add it up again now, but it's in the neighborhood of 40.
40, okay.
That we've interviewed so far. I've still got another, I don't know, another maybe dozen of people that I really am trying to coordinate with, and we've got a few people scheduled. And then now that the preview has come out and some people are starting to see it, of course, I'm starting to get people coming out, hey, did you want to interview
Did
us?
you want to talk to me?
Hey, we have something important to say.
Exactly. What about our opinion? And on the one hand, I have so much content already. Jane keeps saying, sit down. You've got enough already. I'm like, I know, but...
You can always do part 2.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be a series.
Well, 2 things. One, I don't deny, I am just having such a blast talking to these people and hearing these amazing stories. I really get energized about it to the point that when I go on the road, I think I mentioned I've traveled almost 25,000 miles shooting interviews. And when I go on these road trips, Jane has to hear every night me gushing for an hour about, they said this and this was so cool. And I just love them. And, I have so many crushes now. It's amazing.
So tell me, out of people, give me 1 or 2 of like, really
some favorites,
blam, like, oh my God, this blew my mind, or such a big surprise, something like that.
One of my absolute favorites, and I knew it was going to be going into it, was this octogenarian couple in near Tampa, Florida, Jim and Pam, not from The Office. Gosh, I interviewed them just a week before I met with you guys, I think in December, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And they discovered this in their 70s.
Wow.
And what an amazing way to live your later years.
Yeah.
This is a man who very clearly remembers being an attorney in Chicago who was strictly homophobic. Now he's bisexual. Wow. He's embraced his own bisexuality. He dresses in women's clothes sometimes. He and his partner have sex every single day, like clockwork. And they're living their authentic lives. They're living what they want to live. And they're sort of what, for those who like the definitions, they're monopoly. So they're swingers, but he enjoys having, in addition to their partnership, a girlfriend and a boyfriend, whereas she just enjoys the occasional, swinging thing. And so that was just inspiring to talk to this older couple that, it's exciting enough to talk to an older couple that's been swinging for 20 or 30 years, but a couple that discovered this well after retirement,
Wow.
I just thought that was an amazing conversation.
That is amazing.
We've interviewed some advocacy groups, including Brett Chamberlain from open-love.org, but also, say, the Woodhull Freedom Foundation,
Right.
Mandy and Ricky. And for some reason, when I explain it, it never quite has the impact it did on me at the time. But they loved what we were doing, what we are doing, the idea of portraying the positive impacts that E&M can have on individuals and relationships. But they said, but our stance is, it's none of your fucking business. That's their whole point. They're saying, because one of the problems, as we all know, is the majority of people engaging in this type of alternative relationship have to keep it a secret for fear of not just what friends and family might think of them, but whether they might lose their livelihoods, whether they might lose a career. We have to be careful of that. I do, as was mentioned, whatever the fuck I want. That's my job. And so it hasn't mattered as much. But for instance, Jane works for the government in a somewhat sort of politically charged environment. And so we have to kind of be careful. She did talk to her boss about, hey, so my partner is making a documentary about this and that. Just wanted to make sure that there was some kind of, openness about it. And he said, oh, yeah, no problem at all. So we think it'll be fine, but it's still something we have to be careful of. And Woodhull and, of course, like Open and NCSF, they're all fighting to try to change that so people don't have to be so afraid for their careers, as an example. That's a big one. I have a couple that live in our area that he's in the military and he's petrified about being outed because the military absolutely will strip everything away from you. They find out. And that should be illegal. There's no reason that should still be the case. And that's where Woodhull's position is. It's your constitutional right to enjoy whatever sort of a consensual adult relationship you want without it affecting your employment. And it just, for some reason, when they kind of gave us that blunt position of, this is great, you're making this documentary about swell stuff, but meanwhile, it's nobody else's business. That's their position.
And it's so interesting because in some of the circles that I'm in, they're not really aware of the relationship model that I'm in. So when we do start talking about things like that, where I say, well, I'm hoping to be able to make some change so that people won't lose their jobs. And the people that I'm talking to will say, what? Mm-hmm. What do you mean they could lose their job? Well, that's silly. It's almost like there's this thing going on that so much of the population doesn't even know exists.
Yep.
But then when they find out it does exist, they're almost horrified by it. Like, I may not want to be in that kind of a relationship model, but man, I sure wouldn't want you to suffer something from it if you are okay. I don't care what you do.
Exactly. So why should your employer?
So I think that's, I love what some of those movements are doing, and I'm really hoping that we can affect that change, and I'm hoping your documentary can do that, and I'm hoping that people through your documentary will see that they're 70-year-old couples.
Mm-hmm.
They're just society, mm-hmm. and it's not some movement that's trying to nullify any other relationship
Absolutely.
model. We're just... And it's not even that we want to be recognized under some kind of light. It is kind of like what they say, like, I just want to be able to have my relationship and just have my relationship.
And
I don't
not
need
worry about it.
Yeah, I don't need there to be some huge advertisement. But, that's, it's almost like job security for me with the Open Love, because we have to talk about it so that people will know that this is going on. I'm hoping someday that I don't have to talk about it.
Right.
On the other hand, people do post in threads after we posted an interview or something like that. Why do you guys talk about it? Why don't you just shut up?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the thing is, everybody talks about their relationship. It's not just us talking about ours. You see people getting married on television. They have,
That's a good point.
You know, so everyone's talking about
Their
monogamous relationships.
Yeah, their relationship.
Predominantly.
Right.
So why can't we talk about the wonderful things about our
Benefits
relationship
of
as
ours.
well?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so it's not. I think they're more concerned about it being, well, it becomes. They think of it as more of a sexual in nature type of relationship, but
Right.
it's not that. It's so much more than that, as you've mentioned.
Absolutely. You know, again, it was just echoed again, and it's echoed by so many people I've interviewed. Catherine Scantlin from Expansive Connections talks about, again, this isn't for everyone.
Right.
This isn't about, hey, you should all go do this.
Right.
Again, just the conversations about it can prompt the kind of growth that can make your relationship stronger if you never do anything with anyone else. Bob Halloran from Naughty Events talked about how by far the majority of people, from his observation or I don't know if it's exit polls or what, but by far the majority of people that go to, say, Naughty and Nolans, a couple thousand people, by far the majority of them don't play with other people.
Right.
They're just there to enjoy the atmosphere, the sensuality of it, the openness of it. You know, the sex is just kind of the eye candy. Scott and April of Naughty Gym, which no relation to Naughty Events, but they talked a couple of things. One was how, April at first was kind of like, oh, when she was first learning about the lifestyle, I was like, oh, these are like regular people. They just have regular jobs. You know, they're not dressed in clown makeup and, you know, they're not weirdos. But then also how Scott talks about, the sex can be great, but it's all the flirting and all the stuff that it's that, all that energy that goes into it. That's where the real fun is, you know. So many of us, you know, Jane and I talk about, we have an incredible sex life. I mean, we have really great sex. How is some stranger supposed to compete with that, right? And I'm sure hopefully maybe one day we'll have experiences that we're like, wow, that was mind blowing. But it's all that other stuff. That's what it's about. And sometimes it culminates in a great sexual experience. Sometimes it's mediocre sex, but you still enjoy that couple's, you know, company or that person's company and all the energy and the desire and the passion that goes in. So much of what this is about is just novelty. It's just, it's experiencing someone else's desire for me, a new person's desire for me, you know? So.
And when do you foresee, well, I want to say something. You talk about all these other people that are reaching out to you to interview. I say, man, document it, because that, no matter what you end up doing with what you take, I think it's important to document this where we are today.
Right.
It'll be great to see where it is 20 years from now.
Yeah.
And when do you expect the documentary to be completed?
So that brings up a strong point. Something I started to say earlier is that for me, I'm focused on this specific premise, which, as I mentioned, is Open, a journey through love, which seeks to destigmatize ethical non-monogamy and examine the profound positive effects it can have on individuals and relationships. That said, all of these interviews, I've shot over 80 hours. I'm sure I'll be over 100 hours by the time I'm done so far. We've talked about so much more than that because, for one, as you can tell, it's hard to get me to shut up once I get going. But I just enjoy learning about other people and their perceptions and experiences and so on. And because I think there's so much, as I'm sure you'll agree, to talk about in this space, way more than a documentary could ever cover. So I'm structuring this to be a feature-length documentary, but I'm kind of hoping it just turns out to be a pilot for an ongoing series where we can start tackling lots of subtopics. So that's why I'm like, I'm happy to keep, as long as I can afford it, because of course I've built up a mountain of credit card debt so far shooting this. But as long as I can afford it and make it happen, I want to keep talking to people. But meanwhile, at some point I have to stop and sit down and edit. It's probably going to take me in the neighborhood of 3 months to edit everything that I've got. I'm hoping to have an edit done, I'd love to say by the fall, but let's say by the end of the year, and then I'll start submitting to film festivals.
And that'll be 2024.
Right. And so then, we'll see where it goes from there. My big mission now, that is not my strength, admittedly, is building up an audience now so that we can show distributors and streamers that there's a large, eager audience waiting to see this. And so I'm now have to really start trying to get more engagement on Twitter, and we have a YouTube channel and Instagram, and we have a newsletter on the website where we'll keep people updated on what the status of the project is. I'm going to start, when I do start digging into editing, I'm going to release just little smaller clips, maybe clips that won't be in the documentary, but things to show people kind of the tone of it and where we're going with it. I've thought about even converting whole interviews with people into podcast episodes. So I'm looking to release different forms of this over the course of things to keep people engaged, and then hope that, we can get someone like Netflix or HBO or Amazon or somebody to want to stream it in 2024, let's say.
Yeah, that would be great. And so for our audience, be sure and check out the links below, and we'll also have them on our website to share with you guys how to reach out to Rod and get on their email list and join their Twitter. We really need to show them out there that there's a need for this, because we're all curious about everyone else out there and what they've gone through. It's going to be great to see. Yeah. There's a lot of enthusiasm for it, which is great. Obviously you can see I'm very enthusiastic about it, but yeah, it's really gotten a great reception within the community, certainly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the important components to this project is that it's not explicit in nature. In fact, there's little to no talk of sex. It's again, really more about the relationship thing. Again, one of the comments that Scott and April made was because they were outed. They were outed in a painful way, let's say, in a destructive way, where they lost some friendships and lost some business because they owned a gym and so on. And they're still kind of dealing with some aspects of that. And, especially to the people who presented as caring about them prior, it's like, if they could only see how happy we are.
Right.
It's
right.
And it's not like if they could only see how horny we are. It's like, no, if they could only see how happy we are,
Yeah.
So
ultimately, I think that's what we all strive for, is just to be, have some contentness and happiness in our lives.
Yeah, that's always my thing. I don't talk a whole lot about seeking happiness, but I talk a lot about seeking contentedness.
Yeah,
And
love that.
It's just and that's what I feel a lot of in just, again, with Jane and I, this contentedness, knowing we're developing this confidence in every time we have some sort of a strain or a conflict. We've just gotten better and better at how to work through it with compassion and patience and love. So now every time something comes up, some painful, an argument or something, there's a part of me, and I tell her while it's happening, this is when it happens. I'm kind of excited. I'm like, okay, all right, what are you mad about? Let's get into this, because I know we're
We'll
going
get on
to
the other side of
yes,
it.
we're
Yeah.
going to come out the other side of this a little stronger.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, or we won't, and we'll end up parting ways. But if we stay together, it's probably because we're working through this thing.
Yeah.
And so a part of me gets excited, because we're fairly young in the relationship department. As of Thursday, as I was driving out here for all of this, that was our 5th year since we met. So, so many people in this community have been married 20, 25, 30 years and stuff. And so to me, every time we have any kind of a hiccup or a conflict, I'm like, oh, there's another one. So we're getting
Another
to learn and
stepping
grow.
stone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like when you hear salespeople talking about every no gets you closer to a yes.
Right.
Oh,
right.
yes. That's what they tell me.
Building
Yeah,
that
that's what they tell me. I'm like, that one's bullshit. But as it applies to relationships, I agree.
Oh,
That's
yes.
hilarious.
Yep.
Man, it's been great talking to you.
Indeed,
this
indeed.
weekend, and looking forward to what you're putting together. I can't wait to see it. I know we can't. And in the meantime, you guys, please sign up for our email list at openlove101.com. Jackie and I would love to hear from you guys, and you can we'll email you about our upcoming videos like this, or blogs, articles, things like that. And what else? Join Open Love 101 Plus at openlove101.com/members. Anything else? Nope. See ya. Hey, baby, did you like those videos? No? If you did, subscribe below and you'll see plenty more. Yeah.